What's up YouTube? Welcome to Musty Yeti's Tactical HQ. Well, I've had a lot of people send me messages asking me to do a video on how to install the Magpul AFG to the Troy Industries Alpha Rail while foregoing or skipping the Picatinny rail piece that you normally have to install on the Troy Industries Alpha Rail and then install the AFG onto that. I'm going to tell you guys right off the bat, this took me 2 hours to do. That is from start to finish. And when I say start, I mean sit down, plan, measure, double measure, figure out how it's going to work, get everything, the holes drilled, the screws in, and tighten it down, put the rail back on. Actually, it might take me a little bit under 2 hours. So hopefully from this video, you guys can see how it's done. Maybe you can do it better than I can. Maybe you can fix some mistakes that I made or avoid them. All in all, I think this is a really good way to do it. I'm going to go ahead and bring this thing closer so you guys can take a look at it. So here she is installed directly onto the Troy Industries Alpha Rail, and as you can see, it's pretty flush. Some of you guys asked on Offcom how exactly it's going to work. So as you guys can see, there's those channels in the Troy Industries Alpha Rail that run along the rail here. Well, the channel here that normally fits onto the Picatinny rail piece is the exact width of those channels. So even with one screw down, this thing would not move. I'd say right now it's pretty solid. It's not going anywhere. I literally can't move it. The one concern I had when doing this is normally when you install the Picatinny rail piece, you have these circular grooves that fit inside of the circles that stop it from moving. So obviously we don't have that. So I was slightly concerned that this AFG wouldn't move left and right, but that it would slide back and forth. So what I did to potentially stop that from happening is I have these holes drilled. So as you see, it's flush. So I have these holes drilled now to where the screws are sitting at the back side of these holes, so that when I'm shooting and I'm pulling the rifle, it can't slide back any further. Now, if you're one that likes to push when they shoot, then you might want to reverse this and put these screws at the front end of those circles to stop it from sliding forward. But either way, I'm going this way and this way, just so you guys know. It's not moving. I think this thing's pretty solid. I mean, I don't know if I'd bet my life on a do-it-yourself project, but this thing's pretty damn close to being able to do that. It's pretty tight. So that's it. I'm going to go ahead and take it apart. And the reason it's together to begin with is this is actually the first time it's been assembled since I got the project done, and I'm half afraid I'm not going to be able to get it back on because it is a little tricky. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. Let me get this thing broken down and I'll go through step by step to show you guys what I did. So hold on one second. Alright guys, so I've gone ahead and broken the rifle down, and I'm also showing you all of the tools I used to get this project done. First, you're going to need a screwdriver, flathead. That's purely to remove the screw that normally locks down between the Picatinny rails to hold the AFG into place. I'm a little anal, so before I drilled any holes, I measured and double measured, and I did that using a digital caliper that I have. Now, you guys definitely don't need to do that. You can probably skip that step, but that's just me. I double check everything. Along with that, you're going to need 2 Allen key, Allen wrenches, whatever you want to call them. One is to, actually you might need 3. One to remove the rail itself, another one to remove the screws that actually hold the AFG together, and then you need another one to install the new screws that attach to the mounting plate that Troy Industries provided. I used 3 drill bits. I used a really small one to pre-drill a hole to make sure it was right. The next one is the actual size of the screw itself. And the next size up is just a little bit larger, and I did that on this hole here to help this locking washer sink down into the AFG just a little bit. So you need the 2 screws obviously and 2 locking washers, and any sort of needle nose pliers would do the job. I have these angular ones from when I did my lower parts kit install on my Seekins Precision Strip Lower Receiver. I'll show you how this works, and you'll see how all this stuff is going to work out here. So let me go ahead and get all this stuff out of the way. Alright, so the first step, obviously you're going to take off the rail from your AR-15, and guys, when you're doing that, double check, make sure everything is clear. For those of you who know, it's in fire because I actually double racked, checked the barrel, the chamber to make sure it was clear, and I pulled the trigger, so I know there's no way a hammer or firing pin can go off. I'm safe, I'm good to go. But when I did this install, I took the charging handle out, the bolt carrier group out. I made sure there was no chance that anything was going to go wrong. So do all that, and then just take your rail off, and that's using the 3 screws here. Once you loosen them up, you just twist it off of the receiver, pull it out, and you're good to go. So there is the rail. Let me get this rifle out of the way. This table is a mess. Okay, so when I first started with this, I was kind of ghetto. All I did was I found the holes. So this is the center line of holes. I literally just put this thing next to it, got it lined up with the end, and then figured out where the holes needed to be to make this mount work. Now, I thought that maybe I could cut these to just put the holes wherever I wanted. Then I thought, you know what, that might free spin inside of the rail, or it just might not lock down as well, whereas if you have 2 points of contact, you're really going to have a good solid connection with the rail. So I pretty much just played with this thing back and forth. I literally was just eyeballing it where I got this hole, like I said, as far back as I could to the holes like that. Then I put this thing up next to it, got it flush, took my digital caliper, and I measured from the end of the rail to the center of that screw hole. Then I just simply took this, and I took my digital caliper, I copied that measurement to this point here, I pre-drilled the small hole, drilled the bigger hole, flipped it over, and drilled just a little bit for that locking washer to sink in just a tad. Now once you got that done, it's pretty simple. You just take your screw, you're going to stick it through the hole here, and tighten your mount down, and then pretty much where it sits, let me get this out of the way. Where it sits, you're just going to mark the second hole, which I did, and then I drilled it out. Now, I got lucky. I mean, you could plan for this, but I actually got lucky, and these teeth that lock over each other, I didn't separate or break. I somehow got those holes just right where there's still, I don't know, 95% of that tooth there, and maybe 50% on the inside one. So, also I noticed I test fitted the AFG onto the rail, and I noticed that the screws stuck out a little bit further than I needed. So I marked them, I took a Dremel, and I ground down both screws so that they sit just above or below, however you want to look at it, the mount when it's installed. So I did that. Now the tricky part is, let me go ahead and take this middle screw out here, and I'll show you. Oh, I'll do it before that. So one of the crappy things is you can't get the screw into the hole. The height of the gap there is not big enough to get the screw in the hole to tighten it down. So I got a little MacGyverish here. Let me take this thing apart and hope I don't break something now at the last step. I'm showing you guys how to do it. So I took it apart. Alright. And what I did was I took the Dremel and I notched that little piece out a little bit more. So it wasn't more like a complete circle, like that. And I went ahead and just made it so the screw can just pop in. So I hope that's clear. So I'm going to break this, watch. Snaps in there, so that's good to go. And then I take my piece again. I lock those teeth back together. I grab this stupid, I hate this thing. Put this back in there. So now your screw is in there. Oh, see, that's why I hate that thing, because it never stays in there. Okay, get in there. Okay. Let me get this screw put together before I start yapping anymore. Give me 2 seconds. Alright, so we got the screw back in there. So now that screw there's no way that's even coming out. So if that were to loosen up ever, you're not going to lose it. So that screw is in there. This other one is just a matter of sliding it into the hole when you're set to go. Now I originally had taller screws, kind of they had heads like this. I don't know if you can see that. But obviously it protrudes out a little bit more than it should. So I ran to Ace and I don't even know what these are called, but they're round at the top to help the profile lower a little bit. So that part is done. Now this is the really tricky part that I'm going to have to do some of it off camera, because it's a matter of holding your mount inside of here, and you got to tighten these evenly. On mine I did. I have to take and tighten these down slowly one at a time. If I tighten this down too far, I can't get the inside one to tighten. So I'm going to explain how I get it started, and then I'm just going to do it off camera. So I just get this one started with the normal Allen wrench, and then this one I have to twist by hand until I get it just enough where I can keep going by hand, and I'll show you what I do next. So give me 1 second. Alright guys, so before you do what I'm doing here, make sure you test fit everything and make sure it fits. So I know this is going to work the first time, so I went ahead and put Loctite on here, and I got to hurry before it dries. So I went ahead and tightened this one by hand. I'm going to keep going, and it's a slow process, so you just have to work with it. That one you can do with the Allen key, so let me just keep this going by hand here. Alright, let me get the correct size. Okay, there we go. And before you get crazy here, you want to make sure you're lined up in the right hole there, that you're centered, and I am. So I'm going to tighten this down a little bit. Oh, you know what I should have done first, actually? Let me do that real quick. You want to get these tightened down, because as you can see, we got a little gap there. So I'm going to do that really, oh, I'm off camera. I'm going to do that really quick. Alright, so all we're doing is just tightening these down to make sure. I should have done that first. Alright. So we got those screws tightened down. As you can see, that gap is now is no longer there. It's filled in. So we're going to go back to tighten this down by hand like I did before. Keep checking to make sure you're still centered. Let me go ahead and sit down real quick while I'm doing this. Hopefully I stay in frame doing it this way. So yeah, this bottom screw is definitely... Oh man, it didn't lock in. Okay, if that's the case, just got to loosen the other one up and go back to square one. Okay, so we've gotten that screw reattached, and this is where the angular pliers come in, and it's literally a matter of just doing this. Now this one isn't going to be, make sure we're centered, this one isn't going to be your tightest screw. This is more just to keep that mounting plate inside straight, but this can't hurt, and you can still get it pretty tight with the pliers. So just slow and steady wins the race here. Don't want to over tighten, because if you do, you might break one of those teeth that's in there that's locking the two halves in place. So that's pretty good. And I grab this guy, gonna tighten this thing down, and maybe you guys can see what I'm talking about when it comes to those teeth warping a little bit if you over tighten. So I'm gonna do this off camera because I don't want to break my AFG just so I'm on camera. It's not okay. That's pretty much hand tight. That's pretty good. So I'm gonna keep going with this one. Watch, I'll probably break it on camera. Okay, that's pretty tight. So this thing is, so as you can see in there, I've dremeled those screws so they're pretty much flush when they're tight. The one at the back there is protruding just a little bit, nothing major. So it looks like we're all set to go. And I'm going to double check off camera, make sure this thing is tight enough. Alright, I can't tighten that back one anymore. It's pretty much good to go. So that's pretty much all there is. So if you guys know anything about Loctite, you definitely don't want to use this for a little bit. Make sure it's set, especially with the heat that's going to be coming off the barrel. That's going to heat up the screws. I have high strength thread lock that I'm using, the red. Let me get the lid back on this thing before it starts leaking everywhere. So let that sit for a day. Definitely don't do it the day you go out and go shooting. But that's pretty much it. And I wish I would have shown you how much more flush that is than actually. I'll annotate the video to this installed with the Picatinny rail piece down in the corner here. So if you guys want to see the difference in height, you can go check it out there. But you got to think about it. Let me just get this on here. So look at all that extra height that would have been on there. It may not look like a lot, but now when you grab this thing, it's part of the rail. So it is on there. Flush mount screws look okay. You really can't sink these too much, guys, because when I was drilling a hole through this, I didn't realize how thin the material really is in this area. If you try to sink these screws in, you're probably going to go too far and ruin your AFG. So don't overdo it. Take your time. Let me get this thing back on the rifle, and you guys can see it all finished up one more time. And if you're like me and you lost the screw to your Noveski mount, make sure you put that in there. And one thing that's really cool about the Noveski mount is if you lose your screw, but you have the QD mount in there, it's not going to go anywhere. So it's loose right now, but it's sandwiched between the rail and the or between the mount and the QD sling, so it's not going anywhere. I called Noveski. They do not sell just the screw itself, so I have to buy a whole new mount for this thing. Actually, I might go to Ace Hardware and see if I can find like a rubber washer and a screw that would work. But I'm pretty sure they make this thing to fit specifically for the mount, the rail. So let me go and put this thing together, and I'll be right back. Alright guys, so here's my AR-15 all put back together. Now you guys saw this at the beginning of the video, but I'm not sure if I had the squid rail covers on there from Troy Industries. So this is it, all put together. Like I said before, I went ahead and Loctited the 2 screws that have it directly mounted to the alpha rail. And I also have the 3 screws that mount the rail to the AR-15 upper Loctited. Now give that a day or so for that Loctite really to set. I think that was my problem with the Noveski TRX QD mount, is that I put the Loctite on and went shooting too soon, and it just worked itself loose. So make sure you give it time to set, that way you don't have any problem with things coming loose. Yeah, so it's installed, and the one thing I noticed that's really nice about it being flush like this is obviously it's low profile, but we can still fit the squid rail covers right underneath the AFG still. So you definitely get nice full coverage of your hand, no worry about getting too hot. I did notice that these squid rail covers by themselves still allowed a lot of heat to come through the rail. When I was shooting a lot of rounds, this thing still got really hot, and if you were grabbing it like I do with a really good grip, your finger would actually go in between these squid rail covers, and you could touch the rail, and it was very hot. So that's something to consider. So it's nice to have the AFG back on there to give me some more protection from the heat. So there is a video like this already on YouTube. I think somebody else saw it and they asked me if I could give it a shot and see if I could explain maybe a little bit better on how I actually got to where I am and what I did and why I did it. In his video, he was saying that he was going to trim things down a little bit and make it more flush. I think he had the AFG 1 and this is the AFG 2, so his is a little bit beefier. He can do that. With the AFG 2, the smaller version, that definitely is a bad idea. If you were to trim down any of these plastic here that normally grips the Picatinny rail, I don't think it would work as well as it is. Now you might be able to trim down this a little bit on the edge, but there's no real point in doing that, and if you have a chance of maybe ruining something, I would just avoid it. I gotta say guys, I'm really impressed with the way this thing actually turned out. I wish I'd done this a while ago, and if you guys have the Troy Industries Alpha Rail and the AFG, you guys have got to give this a shot. It's I'm going shooting on Sunday. We're going to test out the MWG magazine, the 40 rounder, see how that works, and I'm going to give this thing a shot, but I'm guessing it's going to do great because it's solid. I can't get that thing to budge. So that's about it for the install, guys. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the comment box below. As usual, guys, take care, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.